Welcome to West 57th. There's never been anything like the Beatles. John, Paul, George and Ringo were the most popular band in history. George Harrison, the youngest, was always the most uncomfortable with the Beatles' extraordinary celebrity, and after it was over, his withdrawal was the most painful. They broke up nearly 20 years ago, but their records continue to sell, more than 1 billion, that's billion, so far. They never reunited, rarely talked about what it was like, but this week, 7 years after John Lennon's death, George Harrison remembers.
Great.
George Harrison has always struggled with his fame.
Your hair looks great.
Although he says he loathes being in the public eye, he has emerged from a self-imposed exile to promote his first album in 5 years.
Don't do that to me. No chewing.
Since the bitter breakup of the Beatles 18 years ago, this deeply private man has been divorced, remarried, and some say hiding behind the secure walls of his country estate outside London.
Great, George.
While managing on his own to record 8 gold albums in the 70s and launch a respected film company, Harrison has avoided any discussion of the Fab Four until now. He admits he's finally recovered from the ordeal of being George Harrison, the Beatle.
I had no ambition when I was a kid, other than to play a guitar and get in a rock and roll band. And I don't really like to be the guy in the white suit at the front. Like in the Beatles, I was the one who kept quiet and at the back and let the other egos be at the front.
When he was a small boy, he told his mother not to talk about him to the other mothers. He didn't want nosy mothers knowing about him. Well, of course, for someone private to become one of the Beatles, I mean, it was a fairly heavy psychological disaster.
Philip Norman is the author of Shout, which many consider the definitive Beatles biography.
The Beatles is not a normal story, it's a supernatural story, and the pressure was supernatural, and it required supernatural luck and forbearance to recover from it, and he has recovered from it. He's the one that we're going to have to ask about the Beatles. There's no one else to ask now, because McCartney won't tell you, Ringo can't tell you, John isn't here.
When you say Paul won't tell you, what do you mean?
He rewrites history all the time.
And Ringo can't tell you because...
He doesn't know.
He doesn't know?
No, he just, he drank the drink, he smoked the joints, he had the girls, and he drummed the drums. That was Ringo.
Harrison was barely in his 20s when the world embraced the Beatles. They were the most envied young men ever, who used their sense of humour to keep the world at arm's length.
Wacky mop tops, cheeky chappies, you know, just sort of, oh, hello then, how you doing? You know, like all the cartoon Beatle things, with the little jokes and...
What kind of girls do you prefer?
My wife.
Your wife. What kind of girl is she?
She's a nice girl.
What kind of girl do you like?
John's wife.
John's wife? Totally not.
What's your plan?
Nobody likes a small fella.
Very naive, very sincere.
Very charming.
Charming, yeah, but a bit thick.
I hope to have enough money to go into a business of my own by the time we do flop. I've always fancied having a lady's hairdresser, selling, you know, a string of them, in fact.
I remember seeing a clip of you saying, well, when this all flops,
oh, yeah, we'll
I'm
all
going to
have
be business.
hairdressers and stuff, yeah.
Yes.
But that's fun, we said that. You know, we were naive in those days. You see, a big change happened in 1966, particularly to John and myself, because a dentist we were having dinner with put this LSD in our coffee. Now, people who've taken that will know what I'm talking about, and anybody who hasn't taken it won't have a clue, because it transforms you. After that, I didn't need it ever again. That's the thing about LSD, you don't need it twice.
You've only taken it once?
Oh, no, I took it lots of times. But I only needed it once.
Harrison was the one for whom the Indian mystical period and the mind-expanding psychedelic period gave a measure of power. As soon as Harrison took the sitar into the studio, he became important, because up to that point, George Martin, the producer of the Beatles, was terrible to him. He used to say, you will play these notes. Here they are on the piano. You will play this. He was the underdog of the Beatles. He was the one who had the most miserable time. Harrison was very much younger, in particular, than Lennon, and Lennon used to patronize him and call him that kid. That stuck for an awful long time. That's another root of this sort of resentment and this feeling of discomfort and rancor that he had as a Beatle.
In an interview before his death, John Lennon said he was really hurt by you, that you'd never mentioned in your autobiography any of the influence that he had on you.
He was annoyed because I didn't say that he had written one line of the song Taxman. But
did you tell him that?
Well, I didn't, because he was already dead after that. But the point to that was that I also didn't say how I wrote 2 lines to Come Together or 3 lines to Eleanor Rigby. You know, I wasn't getting into any of that. I think in the balance, I would have had more things to be niggled with him about than he would have with me.
But he said that you idolized him as a young boy, that you thought...
Well, that's what he thought.
And you didn't?
Well, I liked him very much. He was a groove. He was a good lad. But at the same time, he misread me. He didn't realize who I was. And this was one of the main faults of John and Paul. They were so busy being John and Paul, they failed to realize who else was around at the time.
Yeah, okay, well, I don't mind. I'll play, you know, whatever you want me to play. Or I won't play at all if you don't want me to play. No, whatever it is that will please you, I'll do it.
I don't think the Beatles fulfilled everything that George wanted to do by any means. And I think that perhaps he felt sometimes a bit of a junior member. And the other thing is he doesn't want to spend all his life as an ex-Beatle.
What condition was he in when he was in your car?
He was shot.
There were about 6 officers carrying him. He had a little bit of blood coming out of his mouth.
He was dead at the moment that the first shots hit his body.
I'd like to know where you were when John Lennon died.
I was in bed.
I wondered what you felt, losing someone close to you for all those years.
It's like losing your parents or anybody you know and love. You know, all things must pass. But when it's taken in a violent way like that by somebody else, you know, it makes it very strange. He was very good. He was very good, and he was, in some ways, he was a slight genius. I mean, but apart from that, he was still just some guy like the rest of everybody else.
He was no angel.
He wasn't, but he was as well.
Was he?
Yeah.
For a while afterwards, George was extremely concerned about his own safety. Because, I mean, there are plenty of cranks out there who think, you know, a carbon copy shooting, maybe even get 2 or 3 of them now, you know. All those nasty things which you sort of laughed at before Lennon's death suddenly must have become rather more serious. And I think it was a bit more difficult to get in to see George for a while after that.
Everybody likes to say, okay, one of your best friends got assassinated, so surely you must be nervous about being assassinated too. You know, I like to take care, but I don't walk around fearing for my life, and I don't think, you know, anybody could be bothered killing me. You know, what's the point of killing me? There's nothing, you know, I don't feel that important.
Here comes the sun, do-do-do-do. Here comes the sun, and I say it's all right.
So, strange, but it's just another one of the strange things that's happened in this life. You know, our manager died, our road manager was shot by the LA police. So many of our friends died through the years, and, you know, everybody went on drugs, everybody went to the Himalayas, everybody got divorced. You know, it's just a very concentrated kind of life.
It's all right.
The whole thing has been like this, really, in one way or another.
It's all right.
Just sort of get used to it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.